Hello, 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 and welcome to this Sunday's live, our training. Um, I love having these conversations. So today we are talking about why women are not allowed to be tired. Why women are not allowed to be tired. And this is for the woman who has been praised for their strength but punished for their humanity. The ones that are always applauded for holding it together but never asked how much it's costing them. The ones who keep going even when they're running on fumes, the ones who show up for everyone but don't remember the last time someone truly showed up for them. This is for the woman who feels invisible unless she is useful, the woman who feels guilty for resting and invisible when she doesn't. This is for the woman who is not lazy, not ungrateful, not weak. She is just tired. And nobody seems to notice because she always handles it. You didn't end up in this cycle because you're doing something wrong. You ended up here because you were taught from a very young age that your value lives in what you do, not who you are. That you are lovable when you're productive, that you are worthy when you're useful, that you are safe when you don't need too much. You were handed strength like a job description, not an option, a requirement. So you learned how to carry everything and everyone, but now you don't know how to put it down. You feel strong you've been strong for so long that softness feels suspicious, rest feels dangerous, slowing down feels like failure. Hello, Elsa. I'm happy to have you here today, all the way from California. But here's the truth that no one taught you. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be more than what you produce. You're allowed to ask for help and not explain it. You are allowed to stop being everyone anchor while you're shrinking yourself. You're allowed to be human. And in this live, we are not sugarcoating anything. This isn't a fluffy self care chat. This is a full on disruption on the lies that have kept powerful women stuck in cycles of burnout, silence, and performance. We are unpacking the cultural, generational, and trauma based conditioning that taught you that to ignore your exhaustion and to wear burnout like a badge of honor. We are naming the weight. We are breaking the rules. We are choosing ease over endurance. So if you have ever thought to yourself, I can't keep doing this like this, then you are in the right place. If this is your first time joining me, my name is Letitia. I am the Survival Mode Disruptor. I am a trauma recovery mentor that facilitates disruptive, unapologetic transformations for high achieving women who are ready to exit survival mode and take radical ownership of their lives and their growth. And I love having conversations about the residual impact of trauma. I love having conversations about working through trauma and getting out of survival mode. And if you've been rocking with me for a while, then you know that we don't do surface level healing over here. We go deep, we go raw, we get real uncomfortable in the name of truth, transformation, and disrupting every damn pattern that has kept us stuck. You don't need to push through this training. You don't need to perform in this space. Just breathe, be here, and let this moment be the moment that you stop apologizing for needing rest. Because I promise you, you were never meant to be everything for everybody. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be held as well. And that is the purpose of this training. So let's get into it. You don't have to look broken to be exhausted. And because you're still functioning doesn't mean that you're fine. There is a kind of burnout that we don't talk about. It doesn't look like crying in a dark room. It doesn't look like missing work or falling apart. It looks like showing up, being on time, hitting deadlines, smiling through it, crushing your goals while crumbling inside. In this kind of burnout, where nobody knows that you're struggling because you've been trained to show the world to think that you never do. It's the kind of burnout where you don't ever realize that you're drowning, because high functioning women don't recognize emotional collapse unless it comes to a complete shutdown, complete and utter shutdown at that. So I want to say this out loud so it lands and it lands in your spirit. You can be highly capable and still completely be burnt out. You can be getting things done while your nervous system is screaming for relief. So, we're going to go into high functioning burnout and what that looks like. So, here's what makes the version of burnout so dangerous: it is invisible and it's rewarded. No one calls it burnout while you're still delivering. They call it discipline, they call it drive, they call it being a boss. Yes. But that constant go mode, it's not always ambition. Sometimes it's anxiety and heal. Sometimes it's trauma wearing mascara. Sometimes it's a coping mechanism that kept you safe while stillness felt like danger. Because here's the truth: productivity becomes a mask, a way to distract yourself from pain, a way to prove your worth, a way to silence fear that said, if I stop, everything will fall apart, including myself. So no, you're not addicted to work, you're addicted to what it protects you from. So you might be asking, like, where did this pattern start for me? A lot of us didn't grow up in chaos that looked chaotic. We grew up in emotional deserts, in homes where love had conditions, where needing something made you too much. I know I did. I heard I was too much my whole life. Where achievement got you noticed, but rest got you ignored. Where you learned early that doing made you valuable. So now, stopping feels like disappearing. Trauma isn't always about what happened. Sometimes it's about what didn't happen, what wasn't said, what wasn't offered, what wasn't safe. And that kind of chronic unmet need, it wires your nervous system to hustle for survival. Hustle for survival. Okay. This is not hustle for girls, hustle for love, hustle for safety, hustle for peace, but you don't earn peace. You only embody it. And many of us have never even known what that feels like. Many of us are carrying what was never ours. That's emotional labor. If you are the one in the family who remembers everyone's birthdays, the one who people call in crisis, the one who holds it down while never being held, you are not just tired from work. You're tired from holding what was never named. And I want to say that again. You are not tired because you're carrying what wasn't yours. It was never yours to hold in the first place. You're carrying your mother's pain. You're carrying your grandmother's survival, the unspoken rules about how to be a strong woman, the pressure to smile when you're suffocated. How many of us have been told to put a smile on our face? The fear of being too emotional in a world that already polices your existence. And every time you say, I'm fine, when you're not, your body pays the price. It's not just mentally, it's physically. Burnout doesn't just feel like exhaustion, it shows up as brain fog, insomnia, hormonal imbalance, anxiety masked as ambition, digestive issues, irritability and shame, rage that you're not allowed to ever express. You're not weak. You're wired for survival, but survival was supposed to be a season, not your permanent address. So I want to take a few minutes just to introduce you to the 90-second pause. Something that I think is very important in our lives, that we learn to be able to just pause for a second. So I want to practice this together, and if it's safe for you to do so, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to place one hand on your chest, one on your belly, and I want you to take a deep breath. Let it be messy. Let it be shallow if that's all you got. But I want you to let it be yours. And I want you to think to yourself for a quick second, what would rest look like if I didn't feel like I had to earn it? And I want you to ruminate on that for a second, but I also want you to spend some time writing this in your journal and going back and really digging deep into the answer. As you think about it before you write it down, I want you to breathe it in. What would you do today if rest didn't need a permission slip? How would your body feel if it believed that it was safe to stop holding everything? Let that question sit with your body, because this is the beginning of coming home to yourself. So if this is your first time joining me live in these trainings, I do like to give you um, journal prompts for you to really get to a place of awareness. Whenever I talk about accident survival mode, I say it happens in three phases. First is self-awareness. These journal prompts that I give you during these training is trying to get you to see what you couldn't see, because that is the first step in correcting your course, making a change. So write it down, reflect on it. Don't rush the answer. Let it rise. Let it make you uncomfortable. Let it show you what needs to be unlearned. Because you're not tired because you're lazy. You're not tired because you're ungrateful. You're tired because you've been surviving on overdrive. Now we're going to move into understanding how conditioning gets embedded in our bloodline, in our belief systems, in our business. And this is where we start to dismantle the guilt, the grind, the performance, and start reclaiming a life that honors our body, our softness, our truth. So let's talk about the unseen driver of why women aren't allowed to be tired. Guilt is the fuel powering burnout of high achieving women everywhere. It's not weakness, it's not laziness, it's not poor time management. It is guilt. And it's not just surface guilt, it's inherited guilt, passed down like a family recipe, normalized, expected, required, even. Guilt for resting, guilt for saying no, guilt for not doing enough, even when your plate is overflowing, guilt for taking up space without producing something. One of the things that I have had to learn with my kids is to allow them to say no. I remember when my mama used to ask me to do something and I said no. That was a cut ass. Because, like, how dare me say no to my mama? And one of the things that I've learned to reprogram and change in the way that I raise my own kids is if I ask them a question and they say no, I have to accept it, right? Like my kids are not my property. They are their own independent beings, and they have a right to take up agency for themselves, right? Because my inability to say no to my mother allowed me to self abandon for decades because I thought no was not an option for me, right? So we learn not just busyness, we learn burden by a set of unspoken rules that say we can't say no, we can't ask for help, we can't need too much, we can't rest until everyone is okay. And doing so, asking for help, resting, saying no, is all seen as selfish. So let me ask you a question. When did asking for help start feeling like failure? When did saying no feel like failure? Because that belief didn't come from nowhere, it came from somewhere. And today, we're going to go there and be honest so that we can rewrite these narratives that are keeping us in survival mode for the sake of being a woman. So, where was that guilt born? As I said, I learned it as a child. Maybe you had a mother or caregiver who never rested, who wore exhaustion like a badge of honor, you who never cried in front of anyone. I've never ever seen my mama cry, never once. Who kept going even when she was clearly not okay. And maybe you saw how someone applauded her for that. She's so strong. Oh my gosh, look how she handles that so well. I don't know how she does it. Nobody asked if she wanted to. No one asked if she had a choice. And eventually, I became her because I learned early on the way to matter is to serve, the way to be safe is to be needed, the way to be loved is to abandon myself. So now, even the thought of slowing down prior to my healing made my stomach twist because I wasn't raised to rest. I was raised to earn rest. And many of us can relate to that. It's not nurturing. That's emotional training rooted in trauma. So let's talk about why overgiving often feels like safety. I want to look at the psychology behind it for a minute. When love and safety were conditional growing up, and some of you may not see that it was conditional, but a lot of times it was, especially if you grew up in the 80s. Like, let's just be real. 70s and 80s was a brutal time. But when love and safety were conditioned growing up, you had to behave, to achieve, to please, to feel wanted. Your nervous system learned to equate over functioning with safety. So you became the fixer. You became the dependable one, the overachiever, the one who's always have it together. And now you feel guilty when you say no. You feel anxious when you're not doing something. You feel unworthy unless you're being productive. And you feel like a burden if you ask for help. That's not your personality, sis. That is your protective programming because when your needs were treated like an inconvenience, your body adapted. Don't have needs. Just give. Just do. Just handle it. But self abandonment is not the same as love. And exhaustion is not the same as value. And that gives birth to why we end up in a space where we apologize for rest. How many times have you said, I'm sorry, I didn't get back to you. I was resting. I feel bad. I just needed some time. I didn't get much done today. I'm sorry. Why? Why on God's green earth are we apologizing for being human? Well, here's why. Because the systems we exist in, the patriarchal, I know how to say this word, but it's not coming out. The capitalist system, the trauma informed system, have taught women that value is tied to output, that rest is laziness, that boundaries are selfish, that stillness is indulgent. So we don't just rest, we feel bad while resting. We don't just pause, we brace for judgment. And when we finally take a break, we over explain it, we minimize it, and oftentimes we sabotage it. And the reason for that is because oftentimes we don't think that we've earned it. And truthfully, that creates an identity crisis behind that guilt. Sometimes it's not just the guilt that stops us from slowing down, it's the identity crisis that comes with it. We ask ourselves, who am I if I'm not the strong one? Who am I if I'm not holding it all together? If I stop doing, will people love me? If I stop fixing, will anyone stay? I remember watching Encanto for the first time and hearing that song, Pressure, felt like it was taken directly from my soul. And the sister, the strong sister, talked about how her identity was tied to being the strong one, was tied to helping everyone, was tied to doing, serving. And she spent time questioning who would she be if she couldn't be that. That was us. That is us. The strong women who's never been given the opportunity to rest. Like, it becomes our currency, right? And rest then feels like bankruptcy. And no one talks about it. Sometimes the fear of slowing down isn't about the to do list, it's about the question, the terrifying question: if I stop, who will I be? And that's crazy that we cannot process and show up in life as humans because we're women, right? But I want you to really reflect on, what do I fear will happen if I stop holding everything together? Don't judge the answer, let it rise. Let it be real, you know? It may sound like I'll be forgotten. It may sound like I'll become useless. No one will care. I won't know who I am. But let it rise. And let it rise to remind yourself that that is not your truth, that it's your trauma and you are allowed to rewrite it. So once you start with, what do I feel will help happen if I stop holding everything together? The next thing that I want you to focus on is, what would I love to believe instead? And let that be the beginning of your reprogramming. I want you to get honest with yourself, because that belief that you create today in your journal can be your belief moving forward. You do not have to anchor into the conditioning that you had all your life. Sis, I want you to listen to me. You are allowed to rest without guilt. You are allowed to need without shame. You are allowed to receive without earning it. You don't have to collapse just to justify a break. You don't have to prove your pain to deserve peace. So next, we're going to be unpacking the softness you are not allowed to have, because healing doesn't just happen in the fight. It happens in the exhale, in the letting go, the softness that says, I don't have to grip so tightly to be safe anymore. Okay? So we're going to start with rest is resistance. Okay? Your body doesn't know how to rest, not because you're broken, but because you were never taught how. Your nervous system has been wired for anticipation over performance, emotional caregiving. And then the world praises you for it. But here's what they don't see. Can you can't sit still without feeling guilty. You cancel rest to check one more box. Your mind races even when your body is exhausted. And that's all dysregulation. Burnout isn't just mental, it's physical. Your body is keeping score. Common signs that you have normalized stress is shoulder tension so chronic you don't feel it anymore. Shallow breathing that makes your anxiety worse. Digestive issues, fatigue, headaches, all of the nervous system, all from a nervous system that is stuck in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. Because when you were younger, slowing down wasn't an option. So you stay ready, you stay alert, you stay useful. So your body learns stillness equals danger, and that belief is still running the show. But this is where we flip the script, right? Rest isn't something that you earn when you're done being valuable. It's something that you need in order to stay whole. So I want to give you a few radical, doable ways to build rest into your nervous system. The first starts with a nervous system check in. Pause once a day and ask, what does my body need right now? Not your schedule, not your clients or your children, your body. The second is a micro rest. Lay down for 10 minutes in silence. No scrolling, no podcast, just stillness. That allows you to rewrite the script that rest is earned. Then you have boundaried weekends, right? So pick an hour on a Saturday or Sunday when you commit to doing nothing that is productive. Start with just one. Yesterday, I had to say to my children, listen, I work 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. This is the first week and day that I haven't had anything to do in a long time. And I'm not doing anything. I'm not negotiating it. I'm not explaining it. I'm not getting out of bed. So figure it out. But I don't have the answers for you in this moment because I am taking rest. And my daughter this morning said to me, Mommy, is today going to be another day of rest for you? I'm teaching her that it's okay. And that's important to me because, like I said, I grew up watching my mama go full out, balls to the wall, 24/7. And I want to be able to rewrite that for my kids. And the only way that I can do that is show them that that is possible. So, boundary weekends, even if it just starts with 1 hour, do nothing. Self movement is another way to rewrite this narrative for yourself, right? So, stretch, dance, shake it out, get back into your body, not just your to do list. And put your phone on a sabbatical. Put it away, even if it's just for 30 minutes. 30 minutes every day gives your nervous system the opportunity it needs to be quiet. So, I love giving you guys embodiment practices because I think it's important. Oftentimes, we don't know how to de- deregulate or regulate ourselves. we don't know how to rest because these things aren't normal. But this is some things that I do and then I encourage with my clients to do because it's important. So I want you to sit down or lie down and I want you to close your eyes and just listen to my beautiful, amazing voice. And I want you to inhale for 4 seconds. And then I want you to hold it for 4 seconds. Then exhale for 6. And I want you to repeat this 3 times. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. And as you're doing so in your mind or whispering, I'm not lazy, I'm not behind, I'm allowed to rest. I am not lazy, I am not behind, I am allowed to rest. Your body deserves to hear that in your own voice. Okay? So you were not born afraid to rest. You were trained to associate it with danger, disconnection, and disapproval. But here's your truth: rest is not just a break, it's a declaration. And I want you to consider what would change in my life if I believed that rest was my birthright, not my reward. That's a deep one. What would change for you if you finally believed that rest was your birthright, not your reward? Rest isn't just resistance to the world's pace, it's a reunion with yourself. So you're probably wondering, well, how do I reclaim rest as a birthright if I've spent decades unable to rest? We are finally at the end of this training, but like if no one told you today, I'm so proud of you for staying through this conversation because this isn't easy work. This is one thing that we as women really need to rewrite. When we understand that rest is our birthright, we can reclaim it in a world that taught us that it had to be earned. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So let that settle in, hand on heart, big exhale. I want you to say it loud with me. I'm allowed to rest. No permission slips required. You're not a machine. You're not a brand. You're not a business model in heels. You are a human being, sis. And your value does not increase based on how much you get done today. But but if you're like a high achieving woman like myself, right? You were taught from day one that stay busy or be seen as lazy. Work twice as hard to be taken seriously. Don't rest until everything's done. So what happens is you will learn to equate doing with being valuable. You start to fear stillness and productivity because your personality becomes overworked. That it becomes part of your personality overwork. And I just want to reiterate this. I say things in repetition in hopes that, it really sinks in for you. You are allowed to rest even when your to do list is not finished. You are allowed to rest even when others around you are still moving. Sis, you are allowed to rest because you're worthy, not because you're depleted. So let's talk about boundaries, specifically rest based boundaries, because part of reclaiming rest is learning how to protect it with your words, with your energy, with your calendar. So here are some real life scripts for the next time you need to hold yourself accountable for not resting. At work, you might say, I'll get to this first thing in the morning. I'm at my capacity for today. Listen, my favorite word is capacity. Whenever I'm talking about boundaries, capacity is like my go-to lingo. I don't have any capacity for that right now. So you might say at work, I'll take a hard stop at 6 p.m. and I'll revisit this in the morning. I am not available to answer emails after hours. I used to work in a very high pace commercial insurance environment, and my company was bought by Goldman Sachs. My very first job, it was bought by Goldman Sachs, and I remember my new manager, who was stationed in London, coming to Bermuda one day and saying to me, "Oh, I noticed that you leave at 5:30 every day. Why?" I said, "Because that's what my contract says, 9 to 5:30, and I'm here. I'm here early, but I'm not staying late." And he said to me, "If you ever want to be promoted, you're going to have to revisit that." And I said, "If I ever want to be promoted and that is the only requirement, I'll be fine because I don't have the capacity to be putting in extra work for anybody." And part of that came from working in civil service, and any minute over my 40 hours a week, I got paid for. But I moved into this commercial environment, this corporate environment, and they seemed to think that they earned me. I set firmly on the fact that I don't have capacity beyond my 7.5 hours that I put in every day. And if it's going to be a problem, then I'll just look for a new job. We have to get to a place where we are able to set boundaries without fear. And if he would have tried to fire me, I would have fought it because there was nothing in my contract that said I was required to do overtime. So I wasn't doing it. Now, in relationships, setting boundaries are just as important. One of the things that I used to love saying once I started healing from my abusive relationships was, "I love you, but I love myself more." Right? So, a boundary that you can put in place for yourself in your relationships is, "I love you, but I need some solo time tonight to recharge." Or, "I'm not in this space to talk about heavy things right now. Can we check in tomorrow?" Or, "Please don't take this personally, but I'm prioritizing my rest today." We all need to learn how to set boundaries for ourselves. We're often conditioned to keep everybody else around us comfortable while we are miserable. And that includes rest. So if you are in a relationship where you cannot ask for space or time, that's not the right place for you if it's not received, if those boundaries are not received or honored. So even at home, here's some scripts that you can use. "I'm resting. I'm not ignoring you. Let's connect when I have a moment to breathe." Or, "I need a 30-minute break without interruptions. I'll be back soon." And that's one of the things that I say to my kids. Like, I homeschool my kids. We are around each other 24 hours a day. But when it's my lunchtime after they've been fed their lunch, they know, do not interrupt mama for the next hour. I need a break, and I will be back to attend to them in a minute. Boundaries. And they are not only important for me, they're also important for my kids, which is why I express them so freely with my kids. I want you to remember that rest is not selfish, it's sacred. And you have to get to a place where you're comfortable setting boundaries. Otherwise, people are going to run right over you. Okay? So, how do you build a life that doesn't rely on burnout? This one is big, and I want you to listen closely. If your current life only works when you're overworking, sis, it's not working. Okay? If the only time you feel productive is when you're exhausted, it's time to rewrite what success actually means to you. When I work with my clients, we get to a place where we are redefining success. because that's key. Oftentimes, we are following a conveyor belt of success that does not belong to us. We must learn how to dismantle lies that we've been carrying often for decades. So, those lies include hustle equals worth, struggle equals strength, rest equals weakness, and productivity equals identity. And we can rebuild those lies into truths. Consistency is greater than burnout. Joy is productive. Ease is allowed. Rest is a right. The goal is to no longer balance it all. The goal is to build a life that doesn't demand you abandon yourself to sustain it. Now, before I was a trauma recovery mentor, I was a business coach and a market research mentor. And one of the things that I used to teach my clients there was to build a life, build a life first, and then build your business around your life. So many people that I worked with built a business and then built a life around it, which meant that they were up at 1 o'clock in the morning answering emails. They were working 7 days a week with no rest because they felt like they had to. And the minute they were able to put boundaries in place, they saw a big shift in their business. And oftentimes they started loving their business again. That's the same with our careers. That's the same with just about anything else. Now, there are some careers that require a lot more of you. If you're a doctor and working in the emergency room, you may not be able to say, I'm not working past my end time. But you still need to be able to put boundaries in place in ways that makes it work for you. We have to rewire the suffer to deserve belief. So many women, especially Black women, have been conditioned to suffer first and succeed later, to sacrifice everything, and then maybe one day, maybe just one day, we'll deserve softness. But here's the truth: most of us were never told suffering is not a prerequisite for success. Struggle is not a sign of strength. Grit is not the only way to get where you're going. You don't need to collapse before you rest. You don't need to prove your pain to deserve peace. And if that belief feels hard to let go of, it's not because you're broken, it's because you were taught that your value increases the more you hurt. And we have to unlearn that right here, right now, together. So I want you to close your eyes for a moment as we start to wrap things up. I want you to take a deep breath in and I want you to exhale slowly. And I want you to now imagine this: the version of you who wakes up rested, not rushed. The version of you who takes breaks without guilt. The version of you who protects her peace like it's sacred. The version of you who doesn't explain her boundaries, she just embodies them. The version of you who's still powerful but no longer punishing herself to prove it. What is she wearing? How does she move? What does her voice sound like when she says, I need rest? Now ask yourself, what needs to shift for her to come forward? One last prompt to write down in your journal for today. And that is, if I treated rest like it was essential, not optional, what would I stop doing? And what would I start allowing? And I want you to let this truth rise through your body, not from your inner critic. Because rest isn't just a pause, it is a revolution. And a revolution that allows you to return to yourself. So, sis, you don't need another hustle plan. You need a healing space right here, right now. You don't have to hold it all together. You don't have to figure it out all the way. You just really need to know your next move. You don't have to be on. Let yourself exhale, because if you made it to the end of this training, you already know you're not lazy, you're not broken, you are just tired of having to do and be everything for everyone and nothing for yourself. And that's not failure, it's just fatigue. The kind that no planner, no productivity hack, and no performance can fix. So I want to offer you a healing space, not just another way to hustle your way to getting everything on your to do list done. The Survival Mode Exodus membership was created for the woman who's done performance strength and finally ready to feel safe, resting, receiving, being seen, and no longer apologizing for any of it. This is not some cute self care club. This is not productivity, accountability dressed in pink. This is where we do the real work: nervous system healing, identity reinvention, rest based boundaries, trauma informed community. And we teach you emotional regulation that actually sticks. And we do it together because we're not meant to heal alone. So let me ask you this, sis. How much longer are you going to keep trying to earn rest? How many times will you smile while unraveling? How many more breakdowns will you call burnout because calling it neglect feels too painful? You don't need a better to do list. You need a safe space to unlearn survival. And that's what we've built inside of the Survival Mode Exodus. Inside the membership, this is where women say over and over, I don't know, I was allowed to rest without guilt. I finally feel seen and not strong. This is the fresh space that didn't ask me to perform for love. Can you imagine what your life would feel like if rest was your baseline and not your reward? If community felt nurturing and not draining? If you were no longer measured by your output? Well, that's what we're building, and I want you to be part of it. So here it is, your permission to stop performing, your invitation to come home to yourself, your reminder that rest isn't weakness, it's wisdom. So, if this is something that you're interested in, you can either scan the QR code on the screen or write freedom in the comments, and I'll reach out to you and give you the link for more information. And I just want to remind you, like every Sunday between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. GMT, which is 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern, I come on and I give you things to consider to get you to a place of awareness, which will allow you to step out of survival mode. The reason for these trainings is because I heard so many women tell me, oh, Letitia, this is what I'm going through. And it's so common. So I'm here every Sunday giving you tools and tips to help you move forward, because I believe that we as women can do so much more when we allow ourselves to honor our human experience, when we allow ourselves to pause, when we give ourselves permission to rest, when we decide today that survival mode is not going to be our final destination. So, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please let me know in the comments what were your biggest takeaways. But also, I want you to share this with someone who does not yet know that rest does not need permission. Invite them to join us in these conversations every week. I'm here. I'm around for about an hour. I will give you everything that I have to open your eyes, to make you see that you can do differently, that life can look differently, because we all deserve that, right? Survival is something that we're all celebrated for, but survival is not the final destination. Thriving is. And I hope that these trainings give you the opportunity to see that you too can thrive. So, again, if you want to take this conversation further, feel free to email me at info@letitiarenefrancis.com. Put your comments or questions in the chat, and I will come back and continue the conversation. But most importantly, be sure to join me week after week. These conversations are important, and I really want to be able to help you move forward. So, thank you for joining me. Thank you for your commitment to yourselves for accident survival mode, right? And yeah, I'll see you again next week.